Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa D'Amico, curator for Shine the Light Virtual Art Exhibit, and I have the pleasure of speaking with Allison Belolan today about her wonderful piece called North Star Rising. Now, before we get started, I want to say congratulations. The awards juror gave you the first place award, which is well-deserved and fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. That was awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah.
You know, your piece, and this is a problem with and I love virtual exhibits, art exhibits, because you reach a very large audience. However, the drawback is we don't get a real sense of the dimension and the texture in someone's piece.
Right.
And that, for me, was what struck me first about your work, especially this North Star Rising. Talk to us about your process, materials, take us down that path.
Sure. So North Star Rising it's part of a smaller series of art about like the winter solstice and changing the seasons. So at that time, there's the rays of light that are there. And that is something an image that has been repeating in my art a lot. But before we get there, maybe. So it's a mixed media artwork. I like to say it's a mixed media collage, and that's because there are many elements in there that I then collage together at the end. So I am using, in that piece, I'm using an old monoprint, which is, a printmaking process where you just get one copy of it, that those same images appear in this whole little small series. So I have got my monoprint, and then I'm using found papers like envelopes or wrapping tissue paper that has come my way somehow. And I'm also using magazine images. And I can remember specifically like the blue rocks in this image came from a National Geographic magazine from like the 80s. So I'm a recovering art teacher, elementary art teacher. And so I have a huge amount of all these old National Geographic magazines, because like one thing art teachers do is like hoard things. So I have all of them. And I do enjoy looking through and finding, interesting textures to use, because when I do collage, for me, it's more really like a process of painting with paper than thinking of like combining images together, which is, I think, how most people first envision collage, like the very surrealistic way of doing it. But for me, it's very much more painting with papers and textures. So, when I'm looking through these magazines, I look for something that grabs my eye, and that blue and gold in the rocks was just spectacular. So I used that, and then I incorporated torn paper collage, which was something I'm still doing. My work has changed quite a bit since I made this piece, but not like radically so. You can still see I have continuous elements throughout my work. Like I love triangles. Triangles are one of my favorite shapes, and they very much feel like mountains to me. The rays of the sun coming in, and those were made with a mixture of torn tape and cut paper. So I do like to mix how I'm manipulating the papers that I'm using. I enjoy tearing paper a lot. The sensory experience of tearing the paper is really something that I very much enjoy. And I also love like the little deckled edges that you get and how it looks different, whether there's a printed image on it and how that image is printed and then how the paper's made. I just love those little details in the torn paper. And I also love, putting it next to a cut edge, because they are so different. And I like to draw people's eye to those little things. So, it's, when I'm working, I generally have an idea in my head, but it's also intuitive at times, where I'm just responding to the materials in front of me.
Allison, collage I find fascinating. With your process, how much prep, is something triggering the inspiration, or are you in a sense already have some kind of general idea and you're looking for those pieces to put together?
So that's an interesting question. I think for this particular piece, I had an idea in my mind. So what I had been making snowflakes with my children. So I have 2 children. They are now 8, 10 and 7. um, and we were making cut paper snowflakes, and I mean, they were just so fun. And I was also teaching them how to do gel plate printing, the monotypes. So I took one of our snowflakes and printed it, and I really loved how it turned out. And that is that sort of started everything. And I really loved just the rays of the star, like it, you know, snowflake star. It turns more into stars for me. And it was the time of the solstice. You know, we were thinking about, it was also the beginning of the pandemic. I think time is so strange these days, but, you know, so I was thinking a lot about change and, you know, hope and what was coming in the future. So I definitely had this vision of, you know, like this bright star off in the distance that was like beckoning to you. And so that's how that started. And the blue for the print was the color I had originally used, because blue just feels like very wintry to me. But the gold was so warm, and I found that the texture in the magazine, and I was like, oh, this is right. So sometimes there's an idea and I'm looking and trying to find the right things. And that's sort of what happened with this piece. Like, I had a sort of envisioned idea in my head, and of course it changes a little bit as you work because you don't have control over everything. And then there's other times where I have an idea, but then it turns, my artwork becomes more directed by responses to the material. So it's sort of like morphs as I go, where I'll start with the idea of landscape, but then, you know, I have a textured paper and I'm like, oh, I really love this. I'm really drawn to it. And then I find something that looks good with it. And I just, you know, work from an intuitive response there.
Allison, I cannot recommend to everyone listening strong enough to see your work, to see North Star Rising, but to see really the whole journey of your work. North Star Rising, for me personally, it's got such an energy to it, and there's a boldness to it. I absolutely love it. It's one of those pieces where I wish I could jump into it.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
I'm going for that. So yeah.
Thank you so much for talking about your piece. I'll include your information so people can follow you in addition to seeing your work in this virtual exhibit.
Please do, because I totally agree with what you're saying, that virtual exhibits are great in that, like, it's so accessible to so many people.
Right.
But I feel like many works, and, you know, a lot of my collage works in particular, it's such a different experience in person, and you get to pick up on those subtleties in person. So definitely go check out my work and everyone else's work in the show too. Yeah.
The energy that you transmit just virtually is incredible. So to be in the presence of your work feels like just the most exciting trip ever.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Allison. This was wonderful.
It was. Thank you. I'm so thrilled. It's such a wonderful exhibition. Thank you for taking the time to interview me, and you know, thank you for the award. It feels really good.
Well deserved.
Thank you.